district survey for reading in general. And so I thought about, okay, well, I know I get PD on that already. How many content area teachers get professional development in that? So I sent out that survey back in July just to get a feel for what you felt you needed in order to help you teach reading in your classroom or to incorporate reading. And so the winner was comprehension strategies, although I did include some vocabulary strategies in there as well. I mean, they both help with comprehension anyway. So we're going to take a look at today a couple of strategies that you can use. And it's not going to take away from what you usually do, which is nice. Okay, so I just want you to think for a minute. We can have this conversation out loud. You can have it between the two of you. I just want you to think about, what do you feel is most challenging when someone asks you to incorporate reading into your instruction? What do you feel is most challenging?
Time for me, because I know that we now have like those math mentor texts, which are great, but sometimes finding the time to use them in a meaningful way. And just in general with the workload that we have.
And I'm thinking differentiating, knowing those DRA scores, and reminding myself to have them out as well so that I can differentiate, say, a science text or even word problems.
That's what I think that
Going to
happens
standard.
a lot with, specifically with math, 5th grade math. Everything with the standards is oftentimes multitask, or the standard specifically states done in a real world context.
Okay.
And when you are in a math class with DRA levels, specifically in 5th grade, they can go from 60, 70 all the way down to a level 30.
Right.
And getting the rigor that is required for 5th grade, but still meeting the reading needs of all of your students, it's very hard and also time consuming to figure out, like, how can I make this at each of their levels while still meeting the objective of the math class.
Right.
Exactly, and knowing exactly what they're struggling with as a reader, and being able to identify that and try to coach through that while you're
absolutely.
teaching math, because when you're dealing with real world problems, it's not just math.
No.
You're dealing with backgrounds and their schema and all of that.
And that comes up a lot, because a lot of the generated problems that we have to make planning easier really don't take that into account, what they already know, and they're very unrelatable.
Absolutely.
So even just finding the resources to
Do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, language arts struggles a lot with time too, but time is a big factor. Something else that was brought to my attention, it was in a reading that I did a little while back. When content area teachers are asked to teach reading or to incorporate reading, a lot of them don't know how to because, well, I'm not the reading teacher, I'm the math teacher, I'm the science teacher. And so sometimes those teachers almost feel like, well, that's not my job. It's not my job. I teach math, so I'm going to teach math, I'm not the reading teacher. And so hopefully, after we go through this, some of the time concerns that you talked about, or the other concerns, we can address it with simple strategies. So on your desk, I printed out, there are thousands of statistics that talk about reading. There were a couple, if you want to take a look, I'll read over a couple of the stats that I felt pretty alarming. The very first one, the first bullet, it said 93 million adults in the U.S. read at or below the basic level needed to contribute successfully to society. I thought that was pretty amazing, that a lot of our adults, we're working so hard in the classroom to prepare them for the real world that 93 million aren't there. Another one that I thought was really interesting, simply because it had to do with 4th grade and I teach 4th grade, was the fact that 65% of 4th graders read at or below basic level. This is a nationwide issue. This isn't just a Franklin
Our
Township
district
issue.
issue.
It's not a Williamstown issue. This is a nationwide issue for 4th grade. And then finally, because we all teach summer school in here, the last bullet, students who lose reading ability over the summer rarely catch up. So I'm thinking about those students who started summer school with us who really needed it. They're more likely not to catch up at all. And then over time, the summer learning slide, if they're not participating in our program or they're not doing anything to help themselves, it can add up to equivalent of 3 years of reading loss by the end of 5th grade. And many of those students are already behind, and that's why they're here.
Those are scary statistics, aren't they?
They are. Did you see anything in there? There are more. There are like tons of resources you can go to, and I'm sure at some of our other PDs they've mentioned some of these things. Is there anything surprising? Anything that you expected?
I'm curious to see the reasonings behind, because this is a lot of facts and stats, and I'm curious
Right.
to find out more.
Also, I'm wondering if you can answer this question.
Sure.
It said the first fact the first stat, what is the basic level? Are they,
Like for an adult to contribute to society,
Right,
what is
like,
their
what
basic
is that?
level?
What is that? That's a
Do
good
they-
question. I don't actually know what that
What would
means. I'm
require?
wondering if it has to do with just a basic like high school diploma, a high school equivalent.
mm-hmm.
But that's a good question. I'll look into that.
Yeah.
It's funny because the first thing I thought is because the kids nowadays, they only read text messages and things online
Exactly.
that are, it's almost like we've gone back to hieroglyphics. Like I communicate with pictures of emojis or words with as few letters as possible to
And it's the
represent
same
them.
vocabulary.
And yes,
Yeah.
it's not a very
Growing in
diverse
vocabulary.
vocabulary. And
Absolutely.
that's what they're using in their daily lives to communicate with friends, parents, and even with teachers.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's interesting to see how, where in my mind, like technology should make things easier. You have spell check now. You can look up how to spell words, but they don't
But
use
it's-
it to help
They're
them.
not using
It's just interesting. So I'm curious if that actually really helps these statistics, the more exposure to technology, or if it would create more of a
More of a
reading or
problem.
writing deficiency. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to see if I can find anything on that though. So whose job is it to fix them? So if we're having these problems with reading and it's across the country, whose job is it? And it's ours. It's all of ours. And I'm probably missing some teachers up here. But if we can create a climate or a culture that reading is really important in our schools and everyone contributes, even down to the cafeteria workers, I think students would be more successful. So let's take a look at a couple of strategies that I've come up with. And we will, I have a couple of activities that you'll do with me. You can take some with you and blank copies if you ever wanted to do on your own.
People will probably be doing this.
I know.
Have let's take summer school. That's what we do.
So how can you help? What are the first steps you can do to help? So the first thing that I have up here is to have a classroom library. It doesn't have to be, I know both of you are math teachers, but your library doesn't have to be just math books. It can be anything and everything. And I think it's funny sometimes. I am by no means a math teacher, but when my students, have questions, they want to go to their math teacher and ask. I say, well, what can I help you with? Like, can I answer that question for you? And they look at me really funny, like, well, you're a reading teacher. Like, how do you know math? And I get that all the time. But I feel that if you can have a library in your classroom and students see that you're not just a math teacher, that you have reading materials in your room too, that kind of maybe stigma might go away. The second bullet has to do with discussion. So providing opportunities to have discussion. And I know both of you, we do that a lot in this district. I went to, a couple of years ago, it's probably 2 years at this point, I went to a PD. It was called the for ESL students who are learning English. And they said the best thing that you could do is to just have them in discussions. Even if they don't know the words right away, even if they don't know how to communicate, having a discussion will do more than any curriculum, any program that you give to them, which I thought was interesting. I mean, think about how we were talking about, how did you learn the language, Spanish or whatever language you took? Was it more effective when you sat down and had conversations and you had to try it out, or were you more successful when the teacher said, say, hola, and you repeated?
Yeah.
It was that conversation.
Funny that you say this because I work on the boardwalk and I work with a very diverse group of people, but a huge Spanish-speaking population. I've learned more Spanish at my summer employment than I did when I started Spanish in I think 6th grade through 12th grade.
Wow.
And became more fluent and comfortable. So it's just interesting that I can relate that to a real life experience.
Yeah, that's what they say. The more conversation, collaboration that they have, it's going to build their vocabulary. And it's not just for ESL students. I brought that up just because it was fresh in my mind, but even students who struggle, having those conversations, using vocabulary words is really important. The third bullet talks about writing, giving opportunities to write. This was something else interesting that I recently read in an article. They were saying that when teachers allow their students just to write without any type of limitation, they just let them write on a daily basis. Writing improves more than if the teacher were to scrutinize and actually teach the writing. So just, free writing, giving them the opportunity, even in a math situation, even if you have them write, not scrutinizing and checking for punctuation and periods, those kinds of things can really help. So let's get to our strategies. Oh, I'm sorry. I want you to think about for a minute what strategies you use in your classroom. So if we were to think about reading strategies, what strategies would you say you use in your classroom?
Honestly, for me, I feel like I use more writing strategies than reading strategies.
And I'm going to type them up a little bit so I have them.
So specifically, like if we're reading a longer, more detailed math problem, you talk about what you know, you underline keywords, you say play the movie in your mind, or we act it out, draw a picture, and then we go from there by identifying like key math vocabulary, really just kind of decomposing the word problem into what you know, what you wonder still, what is the goal of the problem, because I'm sure you probably see this too. Oftentimes students just see two numbers, and no matter what the order the numbers are in, they just add them, or whatever. They don't realize that you can have your first number later in the problem, but
Numberless word problems.
yes, we've had a lot of PD, more so with how to incorporate writing into math, and there was a little bit about reading, and this you're about to talk about I love. So.
Yeah, right, numberless word problems. So, a lot of times in math, we deal with math anxiety. And I know my co-teacher partner, would say, so-and-so's really nervous today about math, and I don't know why. Why don't they get nervous about reading? They get so nervous about math and dread it. And so putting that numberless word problem up on the board allows us to work on those reading skills and the comprehension and focus on putting yourself in that situation.
When you say numberless word problem, instead of writing the number 3, for example, you would just write out 3?
No.
It's blocked. It's completely covered.
Yeah.
So you show your word problem, and anywhere there's a number, it's covered up. So they're really focusing on the comprehension and just what's happening in the problem. Because oftentimes they just see the numbers, like I was saying,
Right.
and they want to skip the thinking part.
Also taking out the question.
Okay.
So you start out by maybe blanking out the numbers and the question. Okay, so here's a number, here's a number. What do you think the question could be?
Okay. Okay.
Like it's
No,
it's just another way of attacking that skill.
Okay.
That is probably the most difficult skill in a math classroom. Is problem solving.
Problem solving. Okay. Well, good. I mean, not good that it's difficult, but I was
Yeah.
telling Jenny some of what we're going to do today should help with that. Should help break down word problems a little bit better. All right, good. So I wanted to add this to my presentation and then see if maybe later on we can add more to it. So let me go back to presentation. Okay. So the first one I want to take a look at is an anticipation guide. And I know both of you have taught language arts at some point, so you may know what these are already. Do you use them in your class for math?
I'm curious to see where this is going to go because I feel like it's something that I do, but maybe call it something different.
I
so
was thinking the same
I want to
thing.
see more. It's hard for me to see what it is on the slide, but I'm curious to see where we're going.
Okay, so let's talk about, so what is it? An anticipation guide, I usually like to do in the beginning of a new skill, in the beginning of a new lesson. And simply what it is, I know it's a little difficult to see, but we'll do one together. And there's so many varieties that are out there, but it's a list of statements. Now these statements can be true statements about the topic, or they can be false statements. Now, like I said, I usually like to do this in the beginning of a new skill because oftentimes students may or may not have any knowledge of that skill. Prior to getting into the lesson, I would have them read over these list of statements, and then there's a before column. On the before column, I would have them make a guess, make an educated guess as to if they think that statement is true or if that statement is false. Now they don't read anything. You don't teach a lesson.
Right.
There is no reading required for this. It's just an educated guess. After that, you would conduct your lesson, whether it's through reading, or your regular Envisions lesson, whatever you may use. Afterwards, the students have to go back, and now in the after column, pick if it's true or false based on your lesson. And so the goal of this is to really build students' background knowledge. I oftentimes like to have a discussion with this, students in groups, talking about why did they originally think this was true, that statement, or why did they say it was false. Sometimes students who do know a little bit more than others kind of bring that background knowledge in.
I like that.
I like it so much. I already looked up the one that you have, and I found a template.
This one's on the Polygon. This one's on the Polygon.
Of course
And
you
know
did.
what?
I already found a blank template, so I'm like, oh,
Awesome.
this is great.
Good. There are so many. Well, I have one for you. Like I said, there are many variations, and we'll do one together as practice on a particular topic you have in mind. But some of them can get complicated, or more in depth, I should say. I have my students, because we're reading, I usually have them find the evidence to support their thinking. What book did you find it in? Was there a page number? Go back. Was it on, when we did the lesson, was it on Google Classroom? What date did we learn about that? So there's, like I said, many ways.
That was the original, because I teach at a higher level with 5th grade, so the first thing I was thinking is like, okay, so if they think this is true, they have to defend why, or
Right.
at the end of the lesson.
Right.
Or even
Well,
at the
one of
beginning.
our, having to justify always.
Or if
prove.
they said it's false, turn it into a true statement.
Yeah.
So they have to somehow, again, which is what you guys often say,
Absolutely.
you have to provide the evidence, it's just another way, and now we're writing some more.
Exactly. Yes.
But I like this so much better than the KWL, I think. Not that that's not a great tool, but I feel like,
I feel it's a redundant tool.
yes.
I feel like it's the kind of go-to, I need a graphic organizer and show writing, or shows, something.
It's time to find another way.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
It's kind of stale at
absolutely.
this point, and I think that this kind of, because they'll talk as a group and we share, this is a whole other way to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Yes.
And it interesting when you do try it with students and you have a mixture of some know nothing, some know a little bit, so those connections that they make, it's really neat to see. And it's kind of, my students in the beginning, I don't use this all the time, sparingly, but they almost see it as like a mystery, like, all right, like, am I going to be right? And they are going to focus a little more because they want to see if their answers are correct.
This is the whole growth mindset that our district is,
Moving towards,
following
yes.
towards. So
Absolutely.
I like it.
Well, why don't we make one together then? So
Cool.
is there a topic that you have in mind that we can,
Let's make this really useful because we go start the year. Do you start the year with multiplication?
Yes.
So do I.
Okay.
So I think that because if we do one on multiplication, at
Uh-huh.
least we can actually both use it to start
Sure.
the year.
Absolutely.
Um,
So this one that I printed out is one that has evidence with it. So if you wanted your students to be able to give evidence, they could. Just know it's not necessary. You don't have to, and adapt it to what you need for your lesson. So our topic is multiplication. So in these boxes right here, we need to come up with both true and false statements about, you said multiplication.
Okay.
and do the statements always have to be word form? Can I use a number sentence ever?
I
Or
don't
do they because I know that we're gearing this to bringing in more
Right.
reading and writing, but math is its own language, and so I'm just curious. Do you think?
I think we could use this in that way. Yes, but as far as how it's, I guess, designed to be that anticipatory type of activity, then maybe
More.
And I'm
More.
thinking too, you had mentioned about your numberless word problems, how you do that to kind of ease the anxiety of math. I'm wondering if you did make this more word based, more
and less math.
and less math.
That's a good point.
you're easing into a new topic, but I don't see why not. I mean, meshing
like
the
that
two
idea,
together.
I mean, I'm
Is
sure we could
important.
do it kind of any way. Like, which one of if here's the rule, because we always have rules in math.
Mhm.
Do these match the rule? But again, the goal right now is to increase reading and writing, so
Absolutely.
it makes sense to.
Absolutely.
And are they generally focused on vocabulary?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be. It could be strategies. It could be vocabulary. It could be. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I did one near the end of the year for main idea. Common mistakes. We wrote up there like, my question was, we were talking about main idea, and I had said, on the anticipation guide, one of my statements was the very first sentence is always the main idea, which is a common mistake a lot of students
Yes.
make. In younger grades, that might be very true,
Yes.
but now you're in fourth getting into fifth, that's a
Right.
little different.
Right.
So anticipation guides can take on any kind of statement form.
They seem pretty
that you
flexible.
wish. They really are.
And I'm thinking, Jenny, you probably see this in the beginning of fifth grade, that confusion, and it's a vocabulary. It's vocabulary that I'm thinking of. The factor is the answer to a multiplication problem.
So we can
Right.
write
It's a
that.
huge problem. Oh,
Yes.
do you mind that I type this? 'Cause I really
No,
want to use
absolutely.
this.
Type it.
So,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
sure.
share it
That's
with
what I
me
say.
too.
Okay, so
so
that's
what
fine.
So what
Yeah.
we're talking, I'm gonna actually
gonna
type up
put
what we're
this.
saying
Okay.
because I genuinely really want to use this at the start of the year. And
Yeah,
I think it will benefit
absolutely.
both of
And
us.
so I won't write on this, and you'll share that with me.
Okay, and then you can have that copy. Okay,
Okay.
so you said factor is, oh wow, I'm gonna just use it.
Yes.
So
The
bad.
boards here too.
Yeah, they are a little funny, aren't they?
They are.
So you said factor is
The answer to a multiplication equation.
write a little large. It's good that you're typing.
Mm-hmm.
You have some room.
multi,
Answer factor is can you say multiplication is like is a shortcut for repeated addition or
Oh, I like
multiplication?
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I like how this is going to not force but encourage them to own an opinion
Yes.
Mhm.
and
I
commit,
like that.
right? Commit to an opinion.
Often, and
Because-
it's so funny when you do this. Sometimes I do it independently. Sometimes I do it in groups. But we were discussing the other day, and Mrs. Ruggieri asked a question, and she was like, is it? And they were so quick to change their answer.
I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah.
But with this, to see that they do that amongst themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they see someone had I agree here and someone had disagree, sometimes they'll change their
Yeah.
answer. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see. Any other statements? And again, both
Yeah.
true and false.
Something with equal groups. I want to work that in. You can even work in vocabulary words like inverse and a relationship to division too.
Ooh,
Could help
we
us
could do
too.
that, yes.
Okay.
So, multiplication is the inverse of addition.
Mhm.
That can be the distractor because number two,
Yeah.
you're already thinking.
Distractor. I love it.
Multiplication is the inverse of addition. You can find a multiple by skip counting.
Oh yeah, because we worked that in our conversation today. a
Yes.
lot.
You can find a multiple by skip
By
counting.
skip counting. Drawing arrays is an efficient way
Yes or no?
to find
To
A
find the
product.
product. Well, because now you have product and now they're confused because number two. We spent a lot of time talking about, there are tons of math strategies,
Mm-hmm.
but they need to grow as you grow your knowledge, and drawing an array is not an efficient strategy at this point in time.
So we're asking you to move on, just like the first sentence is not always the main idea. We're
Right.
asking you to move on. Now that's
So we use that vocabulary term a lot in our math
Okay.
classes. So you can have a strategy, but if you're sitting there, if it's like 23 times 15, I'm not writing 23 15 times,
Right.
adding or drawing
not adding
equal rows. So I kind of like that because
Okay.
it's starting at the beginning of the year, talking about what strategies you know, what strategies work, because there are many ways to get the same
Of
answer.
course.
But where are we now
Yes.
with our education?
Yes.
And what's going to work
Moving
best
forward.
this year? So I like that. Can
Okay.
you restate that? So
Yes. So an array
an array is
not, or is, you want me to say is?
Yeah.
an
Okay.
efficient efficient. It's on my word wall, that's why. An array is an efficient way to find the product of two numbers.
And I'm interested, if now that we use array, we should work something in with area. Because
Good, yes.
area basically, as we were talking before, it's an array but just open, and there's nothing in there. So maybe just like, what do they know? Or we could even do something with missing factor. You know what I mean? Like, sorry. You
No,
can
you're
use
fine.
Division to find a missing factor, or we can the commutative property. That's a big one. So we can work in that vocabulary term too. Sometimes it takes a while to
No, it's
come up with
okay.
the
And
statements.
multiplication is a broad topic too.
what I mean?
But make them
Really
think a little
make them
bit.
think like,
Absolutely.
are these statements the same? Are they related?
Mhm.
What's the other one? I might have to come back to that
What's the
division
first one?
inverse one. What did I say before?
The first
The
one
factor
was
is the answer to a multiplication problem.
factors.
Thirty.
A factor is the answer to a multiplication equation.
Find multiple by skip counting. How about the commutative property is when you flip-flop the factors? Or
Sure.
or something like that, because now
Yeah.
you're still working in that term. Or
Mhm.
we can say the additive property, or we can say the distributive property if you want it to be a false one. So now
Yes.
you're working in another vocabulary
Yes.
word that we have to say is false, and now we have to give them a real one.
Yeah.
So let's go to the, are you good with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
So the distributive property
Property.
is when you flip-flop the numbers. Is that what you want to
I'm
write?
gonna say the factors, and it will
Flip-flop
give
the
you the same
factors.
answer.
Okay.
Because now, if once they read that, hopefully it will draw their
Mhm.
attention back to number one. Because I'm trying to think of ways that they can make connections to other problems,
Of course.
other statements.
And that's important too.
Because now that we specifically state factors flip-flop, hopefully they can go back to the first one and be like,
Yes.
oh, let me reassess my
Yes.
thinking here and
Okay.
use what's here to help me.
Absolutely, that's great.
Property.
Is when you flip-flop the factors.
Flip.
I like this.
It is,
Good.
and some of them, they really, they do get excited about it because
Mhm.
it's new, and a lot of them love to be right so much that.
They do. Do you make them commit by writing like in pen or in crayon? Or
You know
like I'm
what?
conflicted with that. I'm conflicted because they do like to be
Yes. I think that would be
A lot
a
of this
great
in that.
great strategy to use, make them write in pen
Yeah.
or marker,
Yeah. Even
and
if I can give them
own
like a,
that, like
Right.
own it.
maybe distract them and take the edge off of it a little bit by giving them fancy pen,
Absolutely.
fancy colors.
Yeah.
You know.
Of course.
It's interesting that you say that because I have a couple of different things where we do writing and math, and once they start to do it and they hear, because it's kind of an independent activity
Mhm.
that comes together as a group. And I was telling you this before at the beginning,
Yes.
they always want to like quickly change
Right.
and like rip their post-it note off. So then we had to start sliding it inside the communicators. Then we had to advance to we just were going to write in pen because
Yes.
they're just so excited.
I
And
always
it's
have
not
them
right.
take out like a yellow crayon
Mm-hmm.
and you need to shade over.
It's a good
So
idea.
funny.
Think about it, and just because this guy always has the right answer doesn't necessarily mean that his answer is the one that's.
And I think it causes them to actually, because oftentimes, as we see when we co-teach,
Yeah.
the students are so quick to rush to get the answer, but if they are forced to write in something they can't take away,
That's
it might
more
slow them
permanent.
down and actually have them comprehend what they're reading
Mhm.
instead of I just read the words, this is what I think. So
Right.
Mhm.
I'm going to jot that down to say using pen. I'm going to put a little
That's
comment
a
on the
great
side.
idea.
Yeah.
I agree with that too. And I have, if this is something, Jenny, you're going to share that with Sue since
It's
you
all
did it
done.
online, which
That's
is
the
nice
best
when it's typed up instead of written out. But I have links to many other anticipation guide.
Oh, we use this all
You do?
Mhm.
Oh, fantastic.
all the time.
This is awesome.
Love
I
it.
recently just found, so this is another strategy that you can use. I said I was going to incorporate a couple of vocabulary things just because I feel that they're so important. And if they're going to be in your word problems, if you can understand the words and you can comprehend what the word problem is
Mhm.
asking you to do. I just recently, which was really cool, this is my favorite one I like to use, and I have a copy for you that you can take. We're not going to do one together. I do want to show you a quick video clip, though, on a science teacher doing this in her classroom. But this, like I said, this is one I've always used. But there was one recently, and it may be in this video. Instead of having a definition, a drawing, examples, and non-examples, she had on there connections. And I want to say it's this video.
Okay.
But what the students had to do in this box within the Freyer model was to make cross-curricular connections. So where did you see this word in other subject areas? Which was really neat. Now, do you use these in your class, Jenny?
I do.
Okay, great. Then it'll be, I have, like I said, a quick video to show you.
When you introduce, especially, did I do this when we go to third grade?
You may have.
Because whenever I use it for when I introduce shapes, and they have to like walk around and touch the shapes, and it just has the name, and then they have to come up with, because you know how like, especially if you're doing like the hierarchy of quadrilaterals, how they have all these different rules that, but I feel like I did it more with 3D shapes. And
I was just
love
gonna
it.
say that would work for
I
3D.
love it. Maybe I was.
What is this going on?
Okay, this should be it. Yeah, I want to say it's this particular video where she had the connections ones. And I thought that was really
like
cool,
that.
really interesting. So, all right, here we go.
The Framer model is a tool for teaching vocabulary in a very direct way. And it's a kind of a 4-square model where the students write the word that they need to know, a really important vocabulary word. We call them depth words here at the school. And they write it in the middle of the Sprayer model, and then there are 4 different ways they connect with what the word means. With the definition, they learn the exact definition of the word. They draw a picture of the word, they use the word in a sentence, and then they make connections from this word to other content areas.
So there,
I use the document in class by giving them all their own copy of a Frayer model. And then I either put the copy up on our TV screen for them to see as I write down each section, what goes in each section, or I use the board and we do it on the board. I put a copy of this Frayer model on the board for us to look at today. So we talk through each area one at a time. And before we do the definition, I invite them to tell me what they think the definition means. And I try to take all of their definitions and weave them into the one that I really want for us to have. Paula said the word sphere. She says a planet has something to do with geometry. A planet is a sphere. Remember, a sphere is like what? Like everybody? Like a ball, right? So I like that. We're going to put all these definitions together and see what we can come up with. For the pictures, I ask for their ideas, and then I do a picture, but I let them have freedom to draw their own picture, what excites them, as long as it goes right back to the word. If we tie a picture to a definition, our brain has 2 things to hold on to remember the definition. I'm going to make an arrow going this way, and over here is the sun. That's the star that we orbit. And same thing with sentences. We brainstorm some sentences, and then in the end they write a sentence that makes sense to them. And then we all write down the same connections. I like the Frayer model because I've seen so much improvement in my students' ability to retain information. They can really recall the vocabulary words that I need them to know well, and we can go back to the Frayer model. We have a notebook we keep all of the pages in. They can go back and look at things and recall those words, and I've seen such an improvement in my vocabulary scores.
I like the Fair model because there's lots of different ways that you can understand the word. Like you have the word in the middle, and then you have 4 different examples, so you can understand what the meaning of the word is.
My students like the Frayer model because they really enjoy knowing what a word means, exactly what it means. They enjoy drawing. I have a lot of artists in my class, and I know some of them connect to that. I have kids who are auditory learners, and so they can hear me say the definition, and they can write it down and remember it. They like being able to put it in the context of a sentence and kind of impress everybody by their knowledge. By the time they've learned the definition and drawn the picture, they're able to use it in a sentence. And then they love making the connections to other parts of their lives.
I really like how she makes it, they have like a journal, a notebook that they put it in. I almost was thinking about, our traditional word walls that we have. Maybe, putting a couple of these into like a notebook. And
My
kind of
kids,
keeping
they
it
draw
all
their
here.
own. They can draw their own.
Yeah.
After I coach them through, draw that rectangle in the middle, or draw a circle in the middle, and just practice, and then draw a line up, down, side to side. You're done.
So
Because I don't like, I'm disorganized with paper. So
Because like I make the graphic organizer and I do everything on 5 sheets of paper.
oh, okay.
You go through like
See,
you
we're
stick
all
a week.
different.
But it
Right,
works.
that's
So
okay.
it's just
And
funny.
if they, as long as they like it.
But I think of it as an anchor chart too. Like once
Oh,
because we
absolutely.
use so many different
Sure.
anchor charts.
Yes.
But even if you have a lesson where each kid has to investigate a
Mhm.
different vocabulary
Mhm.
related to the lesson, and then they create the anchor chart based
Yeah.
off of what they have, and now it adds to your word wall.
And we had that discussion about area and perimeter. It's like we struggle with it, and we're still trying to find meaningful ways to have them explore. So when they're stuck on, this problem says to find the area of this
Right.
yard. What's area? And they can look back and use their notebooks to find this graphic organizer to help them.
No, I agree.
Mhm.
We use it
It's
a lot in
simple.
class
It's so
too.
simple.
Okay, so and I have another vocabulary one. It's called concept mapping. This is probably one of my most favorite ones because students, when they work together, they have to work together to figure out the main idea. It could be a particular skill. I know I use it in reading passages with like details from the story, and they have to figure out, or details from the article, and they have to figure out what the main idea is. But it's based on vocabulary words within a topic. I have an example instead of this one. There are, just like the others that I shared with you, there are many concept map circles. So the way that it's set up, the circle in the middle here is what the students are trying to figure out. So they're trying to figure out.
So that's a mystery.
That's the mystery, yeah. That's what they're trying to figure out.
Okay.
What is the, what am I talking about here? What
Okay.
topic? The middle circle are words that have to do with that topic. They could be other vocabulary words from your teaching. The outer ring is used for students to take notes. So the way that I would approach this is I would give this to my students, and we would go over these words, and I would say, okay, boys and girls, I want you to try to think of the topic that I'm talking about. What is it that we're going to be discussing, or maybe this was something that we already learned. And so in this particular example, I have 4 words. I have the word improper, I have the word whole, equal, and parts. And I'm not going to tell them anything about what those words mean. Together they would work in a group, and in these areas take notes, maybe give each person a word. Well, I know, I've seen the word whole when we were talking about, making a pizza and cutting them into slices. And then I would have them discuss. And like I said, the goal is to try to get students to make those connections from lessons that you've done, or if you wanted to do this as an introduction activity, to try to guess what it is, what skill, what topic am I talking about.
I like this a lot. I've
So,
never done this.
Based on this, and I try to make it as simple. This particular map has more than 4 slots, so you can do a lot more with it. But based on what I have, can you take a guess at what I'm getting at?
I'm thinking fractions,
I'm
but
thinking fractions greater than 1.
Yep, that was my idea. It was fractions.
Yeah.
So, but
They used to be called mixed numbers, right?
I like that you actually, because I kept it just fractions, but because of the one word,
just fractions.
but your definition actually makes more sense, because the word improper is there, we are then going to be working with fractions greater than 1, because of the word improper. So it's nice that you actually took my idea and expanded on it to dig deeper.
and that's what these that
You
go
remember
along
when
with
I
it.
did that?
Because that's why I thought it was mixed number, because the word fraction was not here, and I thought this word parts was in place of fraction, like that's the parts, this
See,
is the
so
whole.
it's so now we're thinking more. So I thought broad, but I like that idea. You know, this reminds me like when we did the activity, like which one doesn't belong,
Yes,
and then having to
yes.
find something else that fits the rule.
Absolutely.
She's gonna go home, she's gonna
You have
create
no
a
idea
whole
what
bunch
I'm
of
gonna
these
do.
things.
No, that's okay. That's okay. This is just a little
Do you
dose
have
of
any
what
more
things you
questions?
can do. And you know what? I have, yep,
A circle.
I have blank ones that you can take with you.
Well,
And these are just a
I want
Google
one of
search
those
away.
too.
Okay, cool. Oh, yeah, yeah,
extra.
yeah. Here we go.
Oh, you want, oh, I have, yep, I
Okay.
have a larger one too. Mm-hmm.
Thinking this might be a nice activity for tomorrow, the last day of summer school.
Oh, that might be good.
Like, see what you remember.
All right.
Okay. All right, so the last one I wanted to go over with is close reading. I'm sorry?
We just wish we were such dorks because
No,
we
no, no,
enjoy.
it's okay. It's okay. This is good.
I just get
This
excited.
is good. So the last thing that I want to talk about is close reading. And typically you see this a lot in, reading classes. And simply what it is, it's just reading a text multiple times in order to find specific information. So I know you had talked about, Jenny, about how when you approach a word problem, you have students, underline or circle numbers, underline maybe
Important.
special
Find
vocabulary,
different things. There's a whole. I have a whole set of rules that are posted on my wall just to help guide them because sometimes they have no idea where to start.
Oh, absolutely.
Off the top of my head, because it's summer, I don't remember what
Yeah.
those exact rules are, but.
No, that's okay. So close reading, I like to use it because it helps them to slow down, to think about what they're being asked, the key concepts, and really break it down without feeling very overwhelmed. So we're going to do one together, and I have ones that you can take home. Mm-hmm. So I have this word problem. Let me see if I can make it a little bit larger, actually. I kept it
I made this
simple.
from scratch and then had to. I printed it on colored paper and then it has all the different steps and when you put it together, it makes a pencil.
Shut up.
So I wanted to use your example, but like I said, for
Oh,
the
yeah, it
sake
was
of
pretty
time,
long.
for the sake of time. So this was I got this from it was a third grade from Super Teacher. It was a third grade word problem, and so this may be typical in third grade or something that it might see similar to fourth grade. But what I would have them do is usually the first step in a close read is just read for enjoyment. Just read it as is. Don't worry about finding the answer. Don't worry about finding any important information yet. Just read for enjoyment.
See, that statement's interesting because I can understand reading for enjoyment in an ELA class or when you're having our dear time. How do I read for enjoyment
They
in
are
math?
anxious. The faces freeze. They're deer in the head. As soon as they see
that.
words in math, I don't know what it is. They shut down.
That was
They
kind
shut
of
down.
how I used. So we got a whole set of mentor texts because we
Uh-huh.
are trying to
Yes.
bring reading and writing. And one of my centers, oftentimes if I do have a mentor text that goes with it, or if I'm doing like a PDL problem,
Yes.
for example, we did the Krispy Kreme one. So
Okay.
I would try and find like a picture book from our library, which being at Ritter, we don't have a lot of access to some of the picture
Yeah.
books or things
Yeah.
like that. That I can put, and that's your center. Like just read the book as a group, talk about what you read, and there can be some graphic organizers here or there, but that's the only way I can
sticky
think.
note behind.
Yeah, right. Like or do a reaction, right? But that's the only way I can think to do reading for enjoyment in math.
So what I would probably do in a case like this, I would say we're not solving anything today. And you can take it day by day, however you want to approach this. We're not even going to think about math. We're not solving anything today. Just read it. And I would have them read it over once. After that, I tell them, all right, so we're done reading. Do you want to tell me what it's about? Well, Andrew looks like particular organizer, the first read is, what is this problem about? And this is where students can write down and talk about, well, it's about Andrew and his friends are having a game night, and it looks like he's making sandwiches for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would write that.
And I'm connecting this to how I teach problem solving. When you read this, what do you see? And they need to be taught how to visualize. Meaning, like, if you had a cell phone and you were taking a selfie or you were taking a picture of that, what do I see?
We
A
talk.
kid
Yeah,
with friends
absolutely.
making sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy, they're having fun. Where are they?
And
They're
like they close their
inside.
eyes and they're like, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've just had this example when we co-taught
Okay.
Yeah, no,
the problem that
absolutely.
we're working on right now, and it's just funny because it's reminding me. Because I told you Ed used that vocabulary.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
of course.
Yes.
Because he's like, I visualize, and I'm like, Mrs. Buriak was your teacher.
No, that's good.
So this is
And
good.
this is and again, this is no math just yet. And I
Right.
would, like I said, you were saying that they really get nervous about that stress, but this is not math yet. We're not doing math yet. We're not even there. The second read, if you take a look at your organizer, this is where the numbers come in. So what numbers are important in this problem and why? So Mrs. Reggioni, you have them circle numbers. Here they would just write down, well, in this case, 4 is an important number because I have 4 friends coming over.
I like this question and why is it important? Because the way, and it might be adding to stress, is I say, what does that 4 represent? What does 4 mean in this situation? And maybe if I said, why is 4 important?
And it's interesting because the way I have a huge poster of the word because across the front of my room. You cannot write or answer anything without saying the word because in your answer. So if I had prompted that and I said what numbers are important and somebody said 4, I would wait them out and point to my word. So I feel like it would go along with the why
Yeah,
here.
That's
So
good. Yeah.
Now they are reading, just to stay with me, they are reading this all the way through each time.
Okay.
So they're reading it once all the way through, they're reading it twice all the way through. The third time they read it, they're gonna go, in this case, they're gonna create a model. And at the end of each sentence, we want them to try to stop and visualize, think, or add to their model if need be.
that's my favorite part of this
Mhm.
right now. The idea of you read the first sentence, illustrate something.
And it can change,
Yeah,
and that's
that's
okay.
what I like.
And know that.
Read the next sentence, add to, or change it.
Absolutely.
Read the next. I like that part of it.
And then finally, they're going to read again, all the way through. So by the time this is all done, they have read it 4 times through. And in this case, in this particular organizer, they're going to write an equation that would represent this problem.
And in the beginning of the year, we would have to model this process through.
Oh, of course. And again, just like all of the others, use them sparingly. Because if you use them all the time, you're going to get bored of it and it's not going to be meaningful. Absolutely. But I really like using these because it does slow them down when they're rushing. They have to focus on each part, really pick apart and understand what the question is asking. And each time they read, they take a look at a different viewpoint of it, which is nice. Okay. So we're near the end. So what's next? So for you, I'm going to encourage, and I know you already created some already, Mrs. Reggioni, but for yourself, pick one of these that you think you might be able to use in your classroom. And I'm going to say one for this reason. Oftentimes, when I come from a PD, that I found an organizer, something I really like to use. I want to use them all. And that's not realistic. I can't be good at all of them. I can't effectively teach all of them. So see if you can pick one and implement it in your classroom and get good at it this year. Make it really good and then see if you want to add on to something next year. And then I would love to, if you do use one of these, for you to reach out to me and let me know how they went. If you have other questions or suggestions, how even I can make it better for reading, maybe you found a different way. For myself, to reach out to Jamie or even Melissa to see if this would be something that other PLCs would be interested in. I think it's worthwhile to go to the reading PLCs too to refresh their memory on some of the basic, we've all seen these at some point, in our career maybe. And so I'm going to look to see if they need me to present there as well. And then I'm curious to see, so when I was doing these, I was thinking math the whole time. I knew both math teachers are going to be here. So I'm curious to see what other strategies, what other organizers I can create to help you implement that.
It's interesting because you teach science one block a day, and I taught science last year, so I was already kind of also thinking that any of this really could be used
Absolutely.
in science as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, in my science, when we do our science centers, my center for 1 day a week, or for that topic of the week is when I bring the kids to do like I didn't call it close reading, but to read text carefully
Yeah.
with them, underline, talking about the vocabulary that might be tripping them up, keeping them from understanding concepts. So I think implement this in that center could help me.
And I've used that as a center before. Once they got the hang of what a close read is, and if you have, this can be used for, I'm sure, any of your math word problems. Or if you created like a generic one, this could be something they could do on their own and
We
get used
stick
to.
it into their math notebook.
I know you say just pick one you want to get good
No,
at, but I
feel
actually,
free to do
but
more.
here's how I
Feel
envision
free.
this though. I actually envision this over a unit.
Okay.
In my, like how I'm processing this, I picture, here's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
You do your lesson, because you teach several different things.
Uh-huh.
Let's come back. Where are you here? How can we, you know what I mean? Like I just see it and then it builds
To that.
in a way, depending
Okay.
on the topic. So I really thought that this was valuable.
Well, thank you. So I appreciate you coming out. I am going to ask, if you don't mind, it's in your, I sent the slideshow presentation to you so that you can leave me feedback. It is a Google form. It is going to ask for your email, if that's okay. And it's just going to me, something that I can put in my reflection for